Dear traveler, the last time you visited,
the last time you stayed at a hotel,
the last time you were on one of our buses,
things were a little bit different.
Hotel staffs are smaller than they used to be.
83% of workers in the motor coach industry were furloughed during the pandemic, and many haven't returned since.
Flight schedules are changing at a rate we've never seen.
You might not eat the same complimentary breakfast you had last time.
Driver shortages are a widespread problem.
Policies related to health and safety are constantly changing.
The truth is,
you should expect the unexpected. But there's some great news that never changes. You've already made a fantastic choice in working with a pro.
Having an experienced team working on your behalf to identify and handle these challenges
was a really smart move.
As we work to make your experience the best it can possibly be, here's what you can do. Change the status quo. Maybe it's time to switch up your itinerary.
Be flexible. COVID protocols literally change daily and vary by country, city, and even venue. Are you ready to pivot to plan B if something happens to your plan A?
Practice patience. Staffing and customer service at the attractions we know and love might be different than what we're used to.
Despite the changes,
we want to say thank you.
We're thrilled that you're traveling again.
From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for booking your group with us.
We're so happy that you chose us for all of your transportation needs.
Thank you, and we can't wait to see you soon.
Good afternoon and welcome to GTO's Business Navigator. My name is Keith Snode and I'm the lead navigator at Group Travel Odyssey. And really excited to have you all here today. We've got some great guests and a great topic that I know is affecting us all. We're going to dive into today's topic in just a minute, but I would really like to invite you to stay connected with Group Travel Odyssey on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. And you can also use those social media outlets to comment, to share your thoughts, to ask questions during this live broadcast. So please log on wherever you are and chime in whenever you have an idea anytime during the broadcast. We're going to talk about a topic that is affecting all of us in the industry right now. The pandemic has changed so much for the travel industry, for the group travel industry, and most of the obstacles that we faced during the pandemic, during the last 2 years, have helped us grow as business people. We've all changed our policies and procedures, and we've really mixed things up and made some improvements that I think we all can agree in the end are going to be better for all of us. However, now that we're back on the road again, which I have to tell you, I'm really happy to say that most of us are back on the road again, and glad to see that improving every day. Traveling with groups and managing expectations amidst all these new challenges while we're on the road with staffing shortages and supply chain issues and all of those things has really created a new area for opportunity for growth again. And we're all learning again on how we deal with those issues. And so today I have three amazing guests. They're good friends and industry colleagues of mine, and I would like to bring them into the discussion, and we're going to have a talk about this topic. First, from Travel Advocates, we have Robert Miller, who is the owner and CEO of Travel Advocates. Hello, Robert.
Hey, Keith, how are you?
Hi, fine. How are you today?
Doing great.
Good. Welcome. Next, we have Karen Pitcherello from Mears Transportation, and she is here in sunny Florida with me, somewhere down the road. So.
Hi, Keith. How you doing?
I'm good. Welcome. And last but certainly not least, someone we all know and love, Pete Pantuso from the American Bus Association.
Hey, Keith. Pete, good to see you and everybody else.
And it's great to have you here. Thank you so much. So I'm going to kick us off. We're going to dive right into the conversation, and I'm going to turn my first question to Pete, which is, let's talk a little bit about the differences that exist in group travel, specifically between pre-pandemic travel and post-pandemic travel. What are the differences that you see?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Obviously, volume is number one, right? We saw group travel go down to just about zero. But we're beginning to come out of that now. We're seeing bright spots. We also saw a lot of change in terms of procedures and how trips were handled because of COVID, the cleanliness factors, and what companies were doing to assure safety, during the entire trip. Not only, the bus company and in the case of our members, but all the partners along the way. The customer wanted to know everybody they literally were going to come in contact with and touch, and wanted to know that they were going to be safe at the end of that journey. So, making sure the bus was clean, making sure that the venues that you stopped at had protocols in place. We also have seen, and we've been seeing this over a period of time, the whole issue of last minute booking. I kind of liken it to 9/11. I remember after 9/11, people wanted to travel, but they waited till that very last minute to make sure everything was okay. And we saw that again in multiples, if you will. People waiting before they planned that trip to that very last minute to make the decision whether it was go or no go. Where were we with COVID? Where were we with protocols? Is there a new strain? Am I going to be working tomorrow? Where am I going to be working from? All of those things came in to play as people were making the decision on travel this time around post-COVID. And we're going to continue to see that. I think that is the new normal in group travel.
Yeah, it's interesting, all of the things that you mentioned. If I think about all of those things that now tour operators and suppliers and motor coach companies and everybody are managing on top of the normal things they were managing pre-pandemic, which were the reservations and the payments and not cancellation penalties and all of those things, you've almost added a whole layer of complexity to everything that our industry is doing to put trips together. You add that to the problem we all know about that's happening everywhere, which is being short-staffed, and which is a very common problem. And so, Robert, if you take into consideration everything that Pete has said in relation to hotels, you add that short-staffed element into it, and how does that affect the hotel side of things today?
Yeah, from the hotel side, hotels are still severely understaffed at the front desk and housekeeping and catering especially. And many of the staff that are present may be brand new to their jobs, probably lack full training. Some hotels may be operating at 50% staff levels, but they haven't closed off any of their rooms, meaning they're still pushing 95% occupancy with only half the staff to service those rooms. So as you can imagine, this can lead to lots of customer service nightmares at the front desk. This can include rooms not being ready at check-in time, extremely frustrating, slow responses from the hotel staff to simple questions, and understaffed meal service. And on the back end, the hotel accounting staff is slower to respond to send hotel folios after checkout and are making far more operational errors on those folios.
Wow. Karen, I'm sure that the staffing issue has affected you too. So would you like to chime in on that topic?
Definitely. It's affected us in so many ways, not just the bus driver shortage, but also shortage for accounting, shortage for telephone calls. What we're seeing is change, constant changes. Flights are canceling, flights are changes. Park venues change. They change their time. They're operating on a schedule today and tomorrow it's a different time. So it's definitely change, and it's definitely staffing issues for sure.
So, I mean, Pete, I know that not only all of the things that Karen mentioned, but that also affects how a motor coach company can operate a tour. If you don't have, you used to have 100 drivers and now you only have 50, those driver situations where you used to pre-place or bump a driver, that you don't get the opportunity to do those anymore. So it's changed the dynamic of everything, right?
Yeah, they're lucky if they have 50 for 50 buses right now. It's usually far less than that. There's not a company I talk to every single day that doesn't have a driver shortage issue and an employee shortage issue, obviously, as all the other partners do across the industry. We started out in the motor coach industry with about 110,000 employees. And a good part of those were drivers. And we lost a lot of folks who just never came back to the industry. When we look at the driver pool, you had a lot of part-timers, a lot of people who were in a second career, some older drivers, and many of those said, you know what, I'm 70 years old. I've been sitting out a year. I think I'll just stay home from now on. And then you had a lot of drivers in particular who said, I need a job, and so I've got to go somewhere else. And they've been working somewhere else now for the last 2 years. It's hard to get them back. And, I'll give you a perfect example. I got a call from another friend who runs another association just 2 days ago. His air flight with a group of 8 people, they were going to their board meeting, was canceled. They got rescheduled. That flight was canceled. They were leaving out of Washington. They were going down to Alabama. They got rerouted a third time to a city that was 3 hours away from their destination, and they needed a bus. And so they called, and we were able to get them one. But the owner of the company said, listen, I tell every one of my employees who now have CDLs to bring your work clothes in because you might be in the bus before the end of the day. I mean, it's that desperate of a situation. And if you've got a driver, you've got business. If you don't have a driver, that bus is sitting, you're making payments on it, and nobody's moving.
That's right. Wow. So, I mean, what are some of the things that I kind of want to dive into? What are some of the things that like hotels and motor coach companies are doing to solve? I mean, obviously they're trying to hire new people, but in the meantime, what are they doing, and how can a group be helpful in that situation? Who wants to? I'm going to leave that open to anybody who wants to chime in. Karen, maybe what's Mears doing?
Sure. What we're doing is, of course, it's all about increasing pay, giving benefits, 401k benefits, insurance, referral programs. If they have a friend, bring them in. We'll give you a bonus. We're doing bonuses after 90 days. We're doing bonuses after 6 months. Anything we can do to get those people in our door. We are lucky and fortunate and blessed that we do our own CDL training. So we average between 20 and 30 drivers a week. Now our retention is 5 to 7%, but we're still averaging people through the door. And if we can do 5% every week, maybe by season next year, we'll be fully staffed.
So that's great. And I'm sure that of course affects budgets and everything like that. Obviously, all of those things that you're doing. Robert, how could a tour operator help a hotel that's in a situation that is, they only have 50% staff. There's less, people at the front desk. How can they, as they prepare for a group, how can they help that hotel be a little more successful, knowing that they're kind of a man down?
That's a great question. I would say if I were the tour operator, just to explain to my group leader, my passengers, what it's like out there on the road in these hotels where they're severely short-staffed, rooms may not be available at 3 or 4 p.m. at check-in time. So sort of just a reset of overall expectations. The service levels that we all enjoyed in 2018, 2019, right? They're changed now because it's not the hotel's fault. They're trying their best. They absolutely are. But, Karen just alluded to having to staff up, and you might hire all this staff, and then you have this high attrition staff leaving after some training. So I would just really try to reset expectations to the actual travelers who are going to be checking into the hotel, and be grateful for the people at the hotel who actually did show up to work that day.
Well, and you mentioned even about the check-in time. You can even set yourself up for success by making sure that you're not having the group check in at 3 and 4 p.m. Work your itinerary so that you're not showing up till after dinner or something. So give yourself a little breathing room so that you can manage that expectation. That's a really great suggestion. So staffing is not the only issue we're dealing with. Karen, when I talked to her the other day, brought up an interesting stat about supply chain issues and how it's affecting the motor coach industry. I'm sure Pete and Karen both have something to say about that, and I know Robert does too. So, Karen, will you tell me what you were talking about supply chain issues when we met with Craig?
Sure. So what's happening to us is, we own all of our equipment and we maintain all of our equipment. And if we need a part, we need 6 parts. We'll order 6 of the same part and only 2 come in. We are allowed 2 a month. So we have to wait and keep those other 4 buses down until we can receive those next 4 parts. It's affected everything. The mechanics that we put on, their timing. When we do get a package, they're working overnight. It's affected everything in so many different ways for motor coaches.
So, Pete, I mean, how would this, how do you hear this supply chain issue affecting the customer experience? Those travelers that are riding motor coaches, what are you hearing from the industry?
Yeah, no, the exact same thing, exactly what Karen said. It's a challenge. You're trying to get that bus ready and get it out the door. And, maybe you've got a tire that's down and you need to replace it. And if you don't have enough tires, you're sitting, or a windshield is broken. It takes forever to get it in. It's coming from overseas somewhere. And it's made specifically for that bus, that model, that year. I talked to an operator just the other day who told me on the tire side, he ordered a year's worth of tires. He's got a big fleet, more than 100 buses, but he ordered a year's worth of tires because he was concerned that he wasn't going to be able to get them when he needed them. In addition to the fact that with inflation now somewhere between 7 and 10%, he was going to be paying, a lot more if he waited any longer. So, the entire supply chain, inflation, the job shortage, and then on top of that, obviously right now, the fuel issue is probably, the number one issue in the short term that's facing the industry.
Yeah. And all of those affect not only the pricing, but, from a motor coach standpoint, if you happen to be in the middle of your trip and a coach breaks down, imagine how that cascading effect, you might be able to, in the past, you might be able to just send another coach. Well, now you don't even have the driver to send the other coach, nor do you have the parts to repair it. So, Robert, you were mentioning something about supply chain and how it's affecting hotels.
Well, room rates, we're definitely seeing higher room rates as we push into 2022, the latter half in 2023. And a lot of this is because of supply chain issues and also labor, right? Retaining labor just costs more, right? To, like Karen says, offering people 401k and full health benefits, that's expensive for employers. And so obviously that trickles down to higher room rates.
Yeah. And then you had mentioned one of the things that I found interesting when we talked earlier was about the cost of goods, the goods that the hotels have. I just thought that was an interesting statistic that you shared.
Yes, hotels are being charged 72% more for the same food, towels, shampoo, all the stuff that they need to procure to make sure you have a great stay at their hotel. So with that, and what Pete mentioned, inflation 7 to 10% here in the United States, we are in crazy times. And all of this is just trickling down to higher room rates. So when I'm presenting a group rate for 23, for example, and it's $10 higher than they paid maybe in 21 when they last ran the group, I said, hey, consider this a huge win, because anything in this 7% rate increase or less is a huge win for 23.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a huge win.
Yeah, Keith, I'd just like to add to what Robert was talking about. Obviously, the same kinds of increases we're seeing on the motor coach industry, but the other thing that we would couple with that is the fact that we lost somewhere between 30 and 40% of the motor coach companies over the last 2 years. A lot of these smaller companies, obviously, most all of them family businesses, many of them minority owned, but it's a supply and demand issue, right? Now that we don't have as many companies, and there aren't as many drivers as we need to drive the buses that do remain out there, the supply demand chain is out of whack. And so we're seeing much higher increases in the cost of equipment, the cost of charters going out the door, the cost of tours going out the door. And in some ways, maybe the industry is now finally getting what it deserves in terms of price, because it's always been undervalued and treated as a commodity, but not necessarily the way you want to get there right now, but it's reality.
Yeah, that's interesting. You do feel like you're finally getting the price in some cases that you really wanted to get all along, but you certainly didn't want the path to get there to be as detrimental as it has been for a lot of people. So, Pete, actually, my next question was going to be for you is that, and I want to kind of pose the same question to Karen and Robert. How do you see, with all the changes we've discussed and with all the things that are happening, how do you see group travel changing, evolving over the next, let's just talk about the next year, in terms of, what groups are requesting, what, where demand is and things like that. How do you see that changing? Get your crystal ball out, please, and tell me.
Great question. I see, 2022 for group travel, I think still is going to be a very slow recovery. I mean, we had predicted over a year ago, almost 2 years ago, that we weren't going to see recovery in the motor coach and group travel side until at least 23, and maybe not until 24. And I think that prediction holds true. A lot of our group travelers obviously are younger. They're students. That spring market, that March, April, May market is peak travel time for students, especially high school students, also college and sports teams. And that planning cycle for those school trips, for example, that would come here to Washington, D.C., where we'd see 1,000 buses a day in pre-pandemic cycle, we might see 400 buses a day this spring, because that planning cycle would have taken place last summer and last fall when we were in the middle of the Delta virus variant and then also at Omicron. So until we get back to kind of a normal travel planning cycle, I think group travel and motor coach travel is going to be off. We're going to continue to see last minute bookings. We're going to continue to see high demands on what the customer expects. And that that safety cleanliness aspect is not going away. There are going to be other variants coming. There's no question about it. It's just like the flu. There's a new variant every single year. And so we're going to have to be prepared to respond to that and respond to it quickly.
Right. Robert, Karen, what do you see as changes coming up?
Well, go ahead, Karen.
No, you go.
Okay. Some good news. I mean, we're seeing hotels.
Robert.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay. So I wanted to share some good news that we are seeing COVID restrictions largely being lifted throughout the United States hotels. Which is, excellent news. But some of the corners that the hotels cut during pandemic are sort of sticking around, maybe to benefit hotels' bottom lines, or maybe supply chain issues or labor issues. But these include no more daily housekeeping. It's very rare now for anyone to go to a hotel, at least a 3 or 4 star hotel, and receive daily housekeeping service. You might get housekeeping once every other day or once per stay. So sort of like resetting expectations as it relates to housekeeping is important. And we're also seeing lots of grab and go continental breakfasts where we once had full hop buffets. Hotels are not able to get, the correct food items or staff the buffets. So, they're relying on these continental grab and goes. And then on the hotel contract side, what we're seeing is certainly not surprising, I guess, as hotels are trying to recover from the last 2 years. But we're seeing stricter cancellation policies where, we might have seen 30 days to cancel without penalty. Hotels are now, at least asking for 60 or 90 days. Which obviously doesn't work as well for groups. Hotels trying to force nasty attrition clauses from moment of time of contract signing, which does not work for tour and travel groups at least. And hotels requiring more and higher advanced deposits. Hotels want money in hand. They want to know that the group has skin in the game from moment of contract signing. So, that's just extra work for people like me to have to negotiate away all of those items.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Karen?
So for us, everything that Pete says in the motor coach industry is the motor coach industry. But one thing we didn't talk about was insurance. So insurance for motor coaches are just absolutely crazy. And going future with the group travel market, everyone has to raise their prices. It's not because COVID hit and people aren't working. It's the nature of the business. And Keith, we're blessed. We live in Florida, so we're all really busy. Our volume, we didn't think our volume would be what it is today, and we're doing fantastic. But I think future, it's going to be definitely partners. As you know, it's going to be based on partnerships and the people that were there during COVID, the people that refunded everyone, the people that are still in business, and it's definitely going to be partnerships.
Right, and I think to add to those things, I also believe that the nature of group travel, probably more on not as necessarily on the adult travel side as much as the student travel side, I think is going to change drastically too. In terms of, students were always very destination focused, where I think that a lot of those groups are going to start when they now are forced to stop along the way to get somewhere instead of traveling overnight on a motor coach. I think that you're going to see a lot more destinations see a pickup in business. I actually think there's a huge opportunity there for some of the destinations. A group traveling from the Midwest to New York City might stop in Pittsburgh and spend the night, or might stop, and even I know there were adult groups that did the same thing. So I think that there's some huge opportunity here with some of the changes that have happened for other destinations and other colleagues of ours to capitalize on what's going on. Do you all agree?
Definitely agree.
Yeah. So I think that, because all of these changes that have happened have not just happened to motor coaches and hotels. They've happened to airlines. They've happened to attractions. They've happened to restaurants. I was just we just had a group that their flight was canceled leaving Orlando. Karen and Mears helped us out in this situation and it was interesting because American Airlines canceled the flight, told us that they weren't going to get us out until 2 days later, put us on that flight. And then the next day called us at 9:30 in the morning and said, "Why aren't you at the airport?" They had scheduled an additional flight, threw it on the schedule, put us on the flight, but no one ever called to tell us that they did it because they were short staffed. So, I mean, it's I can't blame them. And they held the flight, amazingly enough, but it just, I felt bad because the agent that called us, she was like, "You didn't know?" It's just, So anyway, it's really interesting times. So let's talk about what operators, and we've identified the problem. We know what's going on. Let's talk about what operators and suppliers and all of our friends can do to prepare their travelers for this. What are some things that we can do as an industry to prep for the unexpected? What do you think, Karen?
Well, I would just like to say people that came in 2018 and 2019 think we can still send a motor coach 30 minutes before their event. It's not like that anymore. There's traffic everywhere. It's now an hour. And they're upset with us that we're telling them it's an hour ahead of time, but we're letting them know if you want to get to your performance, you need to leave an hour in advance because we have traffic. So we need to explain to them, listen, things have changed. Not only did the world change, but there's traffic now. And I think that we just explain to them, have patience and understand what we're doing. And you might have to add an extra hour onto your charter, but it's for the best and it's for the group.
Well, and I would say, that's obviously Orlando's been a hot area for people to move into during the pandemic, but there's a lot of other areas in the country that experienced the same thing. During most of the pandemic, we had, what was it, Karen? I remember the statistic was like 1,000 people a day, a week or whatever it was, moving into the area. Mm-hmm. So to cause that traffic. I know several other areas in the United States. Pete's smiling. There are several other areas in the United States that have that same problem. You now have massive traffic in places you didn't have it before.
Yeah, we don't have it here because the government workers haven't come back to their offices. So you can go anywhere with no traffic all the time. That's the best part of COVID.
So, what are some other things that operators can do to prep? Operators and suppliers can do. Pete? Go.
Keith, I think it's what Karen touched on earlier. It's really about partnerships, right? It's about working with your partners all through the supply chain. And I mean supply chain, not in terms of equipment, but in terms of the travel supply chain, and making sure that everybody's on the same page as that group moves from place to place or event to event. And if there are challenges, that people know about it before they get there so that you can alert them. I don't think anybody minds being delayed or having some, hitch in the system, as long as they know it's coming. It's when it's last minute and they should have known that they get upset. So it's keeping those partnership lines of communication open.
Right. Absolutely. Robert, what do you think?
Well, the partnerships thing is absolutely key. You need strong partners that know your expectations. But again, it's all about being flexible. We're seeing response times from the hotels when offering us rates or sending us the bill at the end of at checkout date. These things all are taking so much longer. So we are telling our groups, just please know what might have been a 24-hour response time back in 2020, might take 48 hours now. So just things are it's this entire reset of expectations and going in with more reasonable expectations, sort of going with the flow, rolling with the punches when they happen, just really arming our group leaders so that they can best communicate with the end user travelers.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think that part of that also comes just by taking that information. It all. What's, and it's funny because a lot of tour operators changed their cancellation policies to entice people back. And I think now what you're seeing is people going, okay, now I need to go back the other direction and say, I need you to prepare earlier for deadlines. So instead of, I'm going to get you as close as I can and make it fully refundable, it's now, I need you to send, instead of sending my rooming list 60 days out, I need it 120 days out, or I need it 90 days out so that we can give the hotel, like, as you said, Robert, plenty of time to process this information. So I think from an operator standpoint, especially us really kind of looking at it from how do I preempt some of these things and help my partners be more successful in delivering the experience that I need them to deliver. So, Pete, talk to me about how ABA is keeping your members informed of everything that's changing on a regular basis and what you're doing to educate folks on that.
So they all seem to pick up the phone and call me just about every single day. So that's a line of communication. But beyond that, obviously we have newsletters that go out. We have a daily or a Monday newsletter that goes out to the entire membership. We have one that goes out 4 days a week to the bus operators, one to the travel and tour segment. And we use, obviously we use social media to keep everybody informed. So we're letting everybody know, and we expanded, especially during COVID, our reach to go well beyond just our members, but to others that we have on record in the travel industry, in the group travel industry, in the motor coach side, so that everybody that we know or that we can reach out and touch is aware of what's going on, because we think it's so important, not just to let our members know, but let as many people as we can know when something happens or something changes.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And about every 10 minutes. So Karen talked about what Mears is doing. You've, with all the craziness going on, how have you continued to take care of your customers as well as you have, which I know you have. So
just call my cell phone. Just call my cell phone. No, we're just trying to, make sure we have employees answer the phone when someone gets stranded or a distressed passenger or a distressed group. We're just trying to be there. It might not happen in an hour. It might be a little longer of a wait time, but we're there. I mean, we're there to help you, help anyone.
Yes. And I can attest to that. So yes, I absolutely. Robert, you're in a unique position because you work with several different hotels in what you do. So, what are you doing? Obviously, as the you're definitely a client advocate. So
yes, well, we're working with thousands of hotels, right? Because we're only booking hotels into groups. So we probably have around 2,500 groups booked in for 2022. Fingers crossed that they all actually consume. One big thing that gets overlooked and really does separate Travel Advocates, my company, from other hotel reservations companies is we're with you, holding your hand every step of the way from the moment of the time that you requested the rooms to after checkout date. So you're never really alone in this hotel booking process. My staff has a ton of communication with the hotel. We believe in over communicating with the hotel, so the hotel can never forget to insert your rooms into their inventory, to make sure that your rooms are going to be available, obviously, at check-in date and at check-in time. So we're sending the rooming list to the hotels 30 days out typically, and then 24 hours prior to every group's arrival, my staff phone calls the hotel. Hey, remember that rooming list we sent you 30 days ago? We want to make sure the rooms are pre-keyed. We want to make sure the baggage porters are ready to carry the bags from bus to the rooms, so that the group really sort of, has the best, most smoothest possible check-in experience as possible, given the labor shortages that we've all referenced. And then another big thing is contract clauses. I alluded to earlier how a lot of hotels are trying to push for, 60, 90-day cancellation clauses or attrition. Those just do not work for tour and travel groups, and we would never sign off on contracts like that. So we have preferred contract clauses with many of the hotels. So you can still typically expect 30 days to cancel without penalty and no nasty attrition clauses. Plus, things can go wrong. But if things do go wrong, as Pete mentioned, it's the partnerships, it's these suppliers that you've cultivated these relationships with that are going to rescue you from the problems that may happen. So focus on your partner suppliers, and they'll stand with you.
That's great advice. And we've got some great partners in our industry, across the board. And we're really lucky. I've been in a couple other industries, and I have to say that in the travel industry, that's one of the things that really sets us apart is how people work together to solve problems and to make the customer experience great. So we did get a question from Jonathan Okubi. Hi, Jonathan. And Mike Griniger said they both brought this up. And this is probably a question for Pete, which is, since fuel charges similar to 2008 and 2009 are likely to happen, is there a way to offer at least some degree of standardization so that all motor coach surcharge levels? Boy, that's a great question.
So, I'll walk through that gingerly. So first of all, this is nothing like what we've seen before. I mean, the price of fuel has gone up, more than $1 in a week for a lot of operators, and it continues to rise. And I don't think we're going to see it peak out until we get some stability, in Russia and in this new war that they're in the middle of. I don't think you're going to. I think you're going to see huge increases in surcharges, much higher than you've seen before. In fact, I saw 3 or 4 comments earlier today from different operators saying they were looking at $1 a passenger a day, or even more than that. There cannot be any standardization. If there was, it would be looked on unfavorably by the Justice Department. So
Right.
we can't go out there and standardize it, unfortunately. But look for big increases. They're coming if they're not already there.
Right. And Mike Renninger says that he's seen companies charge like a percentage of the total charter cost, but he also mentioned, like, Jonathan had mentioned about the standardization. I'll certainly understand you can't do that, but the timing of the surcharge, to me, I think actually it would be great if the industry had some type of recommended standard for that, where the date by which you're going to make that decision. I know that's difficult. That's really a difficult thing, but yeah. You want to speak to that just for a second? Because I know a lot of people, when they get them 2 days before the trip, it's a real hard thing to implement.
No, I think, and I think until the last few weeks, obviously, if a lot of people that did put surcharges on, and I would also say, I've talked to a lot of operators in the last month who, as they were talking about surcharges, said, we're not doing surcharges, we're just doing increases. Now things have gone up so quickly, so fast in the last few days that they don't have a choice. And typically, you might know as the customer what that charge was going to be because you could track it. Maybe it was tracked to the price of fuel or the price of crude or something, so that if things went up 10%, you were going to pay a premium for that trip. It would be great if there was some way to standardize that going forward. And I agree with you. I mean, the customer, and I say, a group of kids who spent all year raising money, selling baked food or whatever they were doing to raise money for that trip to DC, all of a sudden, the bus shows up and, oh, by the way, we're going to charge you another $50 a day for that trip. I get the imposition. It's a dichotomy between, what's happening, what the bus company needs to do to survive, and obviously those who are planning the trip. I don't see an answer to it, unfortunately, right now. Not right now.
Right. And it's hard when you're in the moment right now with groups on the road and things like that. That it's difficult to stomach for everybody. I mean, inflation is not an easy topic for anybody. It's going to affect, like, as you said, Robert, hotels, and Karen, what you're doing with, and the salaries and everything. I think longer term cost increases are going to affect what groups plan in their trips. I think that people that might have been in a pattern of, we got very lucky in 2017, 2018, 2019, people were doing a lot of big trips. I mean, just a lot of big trips on the group business. And I think that trend we might start to see people back away there. They might do the big trip every 3 or 4 years now and do something smaller in the off years, just because costs are just not something that they can. But I think that also might be a win for some parts of our industry as well. So I think there's opportunity in everything. Did I lose you there?
Yeah, Keith, sorry, this is the producer checking in here. I think you froze out there for a second, but I think you're back now. Are you good?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that. Good old technology. So what I was saying is there anything else from a cost standpoint that you think operators and suppliers can do to kind of just consider alternative ways to present? Have you seen some best practices in the industry about how people are handling fuel surcharges and things like that?
Yeah, not necessarily best practices, but I think, again, it goes back to communication, right? You've got to communicate back to that customer, what's going on in your business and what's going on, obviously, in the world. You've got to make the customer aware that, this is still traveling by group or traveling by motor coach is still the most efficient, most fuel efficient, most green way that there is to travel. And yeah, maybe you're giving up a little bit more right now, just again, in the moment because of what's happening. Long term, we're going to get back to a new normal, whatever that new normal is. It's not going to be same knee-jerk reaction that we're seeing today. But everybody's got to be a little bit patient, and I think they will be. They're seeing it at the pump, seeing it when they fill up their own car, and the price of gas. I know I filled my car up a week ago, Monday and I filled it up on Friday, and the price had gone up 70 cents in that period of time. So everybody kind of gets it and understands that when you're putting 250 gallons in a vehicle at one time, and you see the price go up $1, $1.50 in a week, you know, it has an impact, and people need to realize that. So we'll get through it, but we need to communicate with everybody, and everybody needs to be on the same page and understand the value that they're getting to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, before we close, I want to find out how everybody can stay connected with each of you. So Robert, I'm going to start with you. Tell me how we can learn a little bit more about Travel Advocates and stay connected with you.
They can email me at robert@traveladvocates.com or visit us online at traveladvocates.com. They can, we have social profiles. I have no time to update the social profiles, to be completely honest with you. But if they could follow me on Instagram, I'm Legal Hotel on Instagram.
Great. And Karen?
You can email me at Kate Pitcherello at Mears Transportation. You can go to our website, mearstransportation.com, or Mears, and you can go to any of our social media outlets.
Great. Pete?
And the same thing, you can reach me at Pantuso at buses.org. You can go to our website. We're on every social media platform, and you'll find me just about anywhere.
Thanks. I really appreciate all of you being here today and talking about this and just sharing what's really going on and with our users and just providing your insight into things. So I appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. I can't wait till I see you face to face again, which I hope is very soon. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great seeing you all.
Yeah. I hope everybody enjoyed today's conversation and that it was helpful to you and it shared some insight on what's going on. But before we go, GTO, I want to take a step further. We have created a video, and you saw the video at the beginning, but we've actually created a version of it that you can brand to yourself. You know, it's nice because we have it so we can customize it for any of our members in the GTO community. We're going to share the video on Facebook and LinkedIn, the GTO version of it. But our members can reach out to us. The supplier members, any of our members can reach out to us and ask, and we can easily brand it to you so that you can use it on your social media outlet. And our whole purpose for doing this is to help get the word out in our industry to all travelers, to expect the unexpected, to practice patience, to be ready for what your travel experience is going to be like. And it's not, as you saw, it's not presented in a way that is negative. It's to say you've got people, those partners that Robert and Pete and Karen talked about, those partners are here to help you. And so the intent of the message is just be aware that we need you to practice patience. We need you to have a plan B. And we're going to be here to help you all along the way. So I encourage our members in the GTO community to reach out to us. We can brand that for you very easily. And so just use that resource. It's there for you. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you as part of our community. So we really appreciate you following us and tuning in for today's live stream. A reminder to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, like us on Facebook. Make sure that you follow us everywhere because we've got lots of great things happening. And don't forget to check out our other media. We have our GTO Coach and Go. That's at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays with Jim Delman. And he really updates you on some of the new features, does training on features that have been around for a while, shows you some of the new things that exist in GTO to help you grow your business. And then Destination Dispatch, which is tomorrow, Thursday at 2 p.m. And tomorrow we're focusing on Tyler, Texas. So please join us on all of those social media feeds. Another live stream tomorrow, and every week, Destination Dispatch with a new destination with our destination partners. And then, of course, we sponsor the Destinations Beyond Expectation podcast, which is on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. So please tune into that. It's a lot of fun, lots of really, really cool information and updates from destinations. And Stevie G does a great job with that. So again, I want to thank Robert Miller and Karen Pitcherello and Pete Pantuso just for spending this last 40 minutes with us and really helping us understand what's happening in the industry and some things that we can do to be on top of it. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to see you again on another Business Navigator. Have a great week.
Thank you for watching this episode of GTO Business Navigator. We invite you to stay connected with Group Travel Odyssey on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and be sure to check out more of our media, including Destination Dispatch and the Destinations Beyond Expectations podcast. Please visit our website, grouptravelodyssey.com, where you can learn more about GTO and request a demo. Group Travel Odyssey, business without boundaries.